The halls of Downing Street are buzzing with tension this morning as a political earthquake rocks Keir Starmer's government. One of the most senior figures in his team, Deputy Prime Minister Rayner, has resigned, sending shockwaves through Westminster. A scandal over a miscalculated property tax has triggered a chain reaction that could change the face of Labour leadership. Starmer, who has long been accused of caution and careful manoeuvring, now faces a moment of reckoning. In one swift move, a crisis has turned into a dramatic test of power, loyalty, and political survival. Today, the fate of the government hangs in the balance, and every decision could reshape the path forward. Friday dawned over Westminster with a sense of uncertainty, as political insiders whispered about the looming verdict on Rayner's position. By midday, that uncertainty turned into undeniable reality. Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, would leave the government. Sources confirm that this was not a decision either she or Keir Starmer wanted to make, but the evidence was compelling. Starmer's ethics advisor, Laurie Magnus, had delivered a scathing assessment, determining that Rayner had breached the ministerial code. In a letter to the Prime Minister, Magnus stated that she could not be considered to have met the highest standards of proper conduct. The Deputy Prime Minister acted swiftly, sending her resignation to Starmer, acknowledging the mistake that had brought her to this moment. In her letter, Rayner admitted, "I deeply regret my decision not to seek additional specialist tax advice. I take full responsibility for this error." Starmer responded personally, adding a human touch to the political drama. In a handwritten reply, he called Rayner a true friend and praised her commitment, writing, "Although I believe you have reached the right decision, you have given your all to making the Labour government a success." The resignation stemmed from a controversial property transaction. Rayner had incorrectly paid a lower rate of stamp duty on a seaside flat, leaving her liable for an additional £40,000. Earlier in the week, she had defended herself in a Sky News interview, insisting she had acted on advice she believed to be correct at the time, and acknowledging that mistakes happen. Yet, critics were relentless. Parliamentarians and political commentators alike argued that lawmakers should not be lawbreakers, and that the Housing Secretary must have her own affairs in order, particularly when setting tax policies for the public. As the news broke, it became clear that Rayner's political position was no longer tenable. Her departure created immediate ripple effects, forcing Starmer to act decisively to stabilise his administration. The government was suddenly at a crossroads: either continue under scrutiny with weakened authority or use the moment to reassert control. Starmer chose the latter. Within hours of the resignation, a radical reshuffle was underway, signalling a dramatic shift in power dynamics within the cabinet. Senior positions were realigned to consolidate influence and strengthen policy enforcement, with David Lammy moving from the Foreign Office to Deputy Prime Minister, Shabana Mahmood promoted to Home Secretary to tackle the small boats crisis, and Yvette Cooper taking the role of Foreign Secretary. This reshuffle, though initiated by necessity, also served as a strategic gamble. Starmer had long been criticised for being overly cautious, accused of failing to inspire confidence, both within the party and among the electorate. Yet, in a bold move, he seized the crisis as an opportunity to reboot his top team, reshaping the government in a way that aimed to project competence and decisiveness. While Rayner's exit was undeniably a major loss for the administration, the Prime Minister's swift action demonstrated a willingness to take risks in order to restore authority and momentum. Westminster observers noted that this was not just a reshuffle, but a high-stakes chess move, positioning Starmer to navigate the turbulent waters ahead with renewed strength. Rayner's influence, however, is far from over. Even as she steps away from the cabinet, her presence in the Labour Party remains formidable. Her voice, experience, and public profile ensure she continues to shape the political narrative, leaving Starmer with the challenge of balancing a fresh team with the enduring influence of a former deputy who commands respect and attention. The resignation, the reshuffle, and the public scrutiny all converge to create a scenario charged with tension, uncertainty, and dramatic potential. For Starmer, the coming weeks will test his leadership, his ability to command loyalty, and his skill at steering the government through both internal upheaval and external criticism. The eyes of the nation are now fixed on Downing Street, watching as one crisis gives way to a calculated attempt at renewal, and the drama of British politics continues to unfold in real time. The shockwaves of Rayner's resignation rippled across Westminster, leaving both allies and critics scrambling to make sense of the fallout. For many within Labour, her departure was more than a simple resignation. It was the collapse of a partnership at the very heart of Keir Starmer's leadership. Rayner was not just another senior figure in the cabinet. She was the Deputy Prime Minister, the fiery voice who often connected with grassroots supporters in ways Starmer could not. Her ability to energise crowds, speak directly to working-class voters, and bring authenticity to a sometimes sterile government machine gave Labour a unique balance. With her gone, the Prime Minister's team has not only lost a powerful operator, but also one of the few figures capable of bridging the gap between Westminster elites and ordinary voters. This vacuum has created a sense of vulnerability, exposing Starmer to questions about whether his government can maintain the same energy and credibility without her. Critics wasted no time sharpening their attacks. Opposition voices described Rayner's departure as a symbol of Labour's hypocrisy, pointing to her failure to pay the correct stamp duty as proof that the government could not be trusted to play by its own rules. Lawmakers cannot be lawbreakers, they argued, echoing a sentiment that quickly spread beyond Westminster. Media outlets seized on the story, framing it as a defining moment in Starmer's premiership, a test of character that would either expose him as weak and indecisive, or elevate him as a leader capable of handling crises with strength. Every move the Prime Minister made from this point forward was scrutinised with intensity, with headlines warning of cracks in Labour's foundation and speculating about deeper fractures within the cabinet. For a government already accused of being too cautious and risk-averse, this scandal risked reinforcing the image of a leadership team unable to withstand serious pressure. Inside Downing Street, however, Starmer sought to flip the narrative. His rapid reshuffle was designed not only to restore order, but also to project confidence in the face of adversity. By appointing figures like David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister and Yvette Cooper as Foreign Secretary, he brought experienced voices to the forefront, signalling stability at a time of chaos. Shabana Mahmood's promotion to Home Secretary sent a message that Labour intended to tackle head-on one of the most controversial issues facing the nation, the small boats crisis. These moves were not random reshuffles, but calculated manoeuvres aimed at showing the public that Labour could still deliver even as it reeled from scandal. Yet beneath the surface, questions lingered. Could this new team truly reinvigorate a flagging government, or would it be seen as a desperate attempt to distract from the damage already done? Angela Rayner herself left behind a complicated legacy. Her resignation letter was marked with humility and accountability, but her words also carried a subtle weight that suggested unfinished business. She admitted her mistake, but emphasised that she had always acted with the intention of doing the right thing, framing her departure not as a disgrace, but as an honourable acceptance of responsibility. Supporters quickly rallied around her, praising her for taking ownership in an era where many politicians deflect blame. Some even framed her resignation as a sacrifice that could strengthen Labour in the long run, by removing a distraction that threatened to overshadow the government's broader mission. Yet, to others, her exit looked like a forced capitulation, engineered to protect Starmer at the cost of one of his closest allies. In either case, Rayner's decision has ensured she will remain a central figure in political debates, both as a critic from the backbenches and as a potential challenger in the future. Broader implications of this resignation stretch far beyond Labour's inner circle. Across the political spectrum, opponents and allies alike are recalculating their strategies. The Conservative Party seized the moment, using it as ammunition to attack Labour's credibility and hammer home the message that the government could not be trusted to manage the country's finances. Reform UK and other rising movements pointed to the scandal as further proof of a political elite detached from ordinary citizens, eager to highlight that while people struggle under the cost of living crisis, senior politicians appear to escape accountability for their own financial missteps. Even within Labour's own ranks, whispers of unease began to circulate. While no one dared openly defy Starmer in the immediate aftermath, there were murmurs of frustration that the party's top figures had once again allowed themselves to become entangled in avoidable controversy. For Starmer, the stakes have never been higher. He has attempted to frame this crisis as a turning point, a chance to reset his leadership and demonstrate decisiveness. But the risk is immense. If the public perceives the reshuffle as little more than a cosmetic change, it could further erode confidence in his ability to lead. If Angela Rayner continues to wield influence from the backbenches, shaping the narrative and reminding the public of her connection to the people, Starmer may find himself competing with his former deputy for the loyalty of voters. The media frenzy, the opposition attacks, and the whispers from within his own party all combine to create a volatile environment where every misstep could be catastrophic. In this storm, the Prime Minister must not only rebuild his government, but also prove that his leadership is strong enough to survive the turbulence of scandal and the unforgiving spotlight of public opinion. The atmosphere inside Westminster after Angela Rayner's resignation was nothing short of electrifying. Conversations in corridors, hushed exchanges in committee rooms, and hurried phone calls between party insiders all carried the same message. The balance of power within Labour had shifted overnight. Rayner's departure stripped Starmer of a deputy who had provided not only political weight, but also a vital emotional connection to the working-class base Labour relies on. Without her, Starmer looked increasingly isolated, a leader surrounded by loyal technocrats, but lacking the fiery energy that Rayner injected into the party's image. The reshuffle gave him new faces at the top, but none of them carried Rayner's grassroots charisma. For many, the question was not whether the new cabinet could function, but whether it could inspire, persuade and connect with the very voters Labour needs to hold on to power. Angela Rayner's scandal, rooted in a property transaction and a miscalculated tax bill, seemed almost trivial compared to the high stakes of government. Yet in politics, perception often outweighs reality. The flat purchase that brought her down was painted by critics as a symbol of hypocrisy, a reminder that those writing the rules often struggle to follow them themselves. It wasn't the sum of £40,000 that mattered most, but the symbolism of a deputy prime minister failing to meet the same standard of accountability demanded of ordinary citizens. Opponents seized this opportunity with ruthless efficiency, reminding the public that Labour had pledged integrity and high ethical standards, only to stumble at one of the most visible hurdles. Even though Rayner accepted full responsibility, critics refused to let the story fade, using it to cast doubt on Labour's claims of being a government for the people. The Prime Minister's decision to act quickly and decisively with a reshuffle was hailed by some as bold leadership, but others viewed it as an act of desperation. Appointing David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister, for example, brought experience and reliability, but it also created a new narrative. Would Lammy be seen as a stabilising force or simply a stopgap? Shabana Mahmood's promotion to Home Secretary was billed as a fresh start on the small boats crisis, but the problem is so entrenched that her success or failure will be measured in months, not years. Yvette Cooper's move to the Foreign Office added gravitas to foreign policy, yet observers could not ignore the fact that the reshuffle was triggered not by strategy but by scandal. Every appointment carried with it the faint shadow of Rayner's resignation, making it difficult for Starmer to fully own the narrative of renewal, while Rayner herself refused to fade into political obscurity. From the moment her resignation was confirmed, allies began to speak openly about her future influence. On the backbenches, she now holds a unique position, free from the responsibilities of government, but still armed with the credibility of experience and the loyalty of many within the party. This could make her one of the most dangerous voices for Starmer to contend with. She can criticise without the burden of decision-making, mobilise supporters at the grassroots level, and remind the public of her authenticity, in contrast to the careful and calculated image of the Prime Minister. Far from ending her career, the scandal may have given Rayner a new platform, one that allows her to operate with more freedom than before, potentially becoming a rallying point for discontent within Labour's ranks. The wider political landscape also complicates Starmer's challenge. With the Conservatives weakened by their own internal divisions and the rising pressure from Reform UK, Labour had been expected to maintain its momentum, but a resignation of this scale has disrupted that trajectory. The government now looks vulnerable, distracted, and reactive, qualities that opponents will exploit relentlessly. For the public, already weary from the cost of living crisis and rising distrust in political institutions, Rayner's resignation feeds into a growing cynicism about whether any party can truly be trusted to govern with integrity. Every headline, every soundbite, every attack from across the aisle will add to the pressure on Starmer to prove that this scandal is not the start of a downward spiral. As journalists swarmed outside Downing Street, the story took on a life of its own. The resignation was no longer just about one deputy prime minister stepping aside. It had become a referendum on Starmer's leadership itself. Could he turn this moment into an opportunity to showcase strength, or would it expose him as a leader unable to keep his own house in order? Inside Number 10, the stakes could not be higher. Every minister, every aide, every advisor knew that what happened next would define not just the immediate news cycle, but the trajectory of Labour's government in the months to come.